Welcome back to another episode of the More Than Outdoors podcast, the podcast where we talk about the people, places, and passions that drive Maine's outdoor recreation economy. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Austin French.
And I'm Sam Andrews.
And we are in a super cool place with a super cool person bringing another conversation to you from around Maine's outdoor recreation economy. We are at the Androscoggin Riverlands State Park, and we have found a very unique background for you all today. So in case you were wondering, there are a set of homestead ruins hanging out along the trail here. I don't remember the name of the actual trail that we are on, admittedly.
It's called the Homestead Trail.
Look at that. This is why we bring this guy onto the podcast.
Experts, right from the source.
But so this episode, bringing a very different corner of the industry that we haven't talked a ton about yet in our episodes. And so we have Isaac here from New England Fly Company joining us today. So Isaac, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and trekking out with us, getting our strata points up.
Super stoked to be here. Yeah, I'm glad we found some shelter from the rain. It's unfortunate we couldn't be on the water, but excited to be here in this homestead ruins with you guys.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we'll get on the river.
Yeah. There's a part 2 of this episode for sure when maybe all of us have a tidbit more time in our schedules. But glad we were able to get this on the calendar because I think it's going to be a great conversation. So one thing we like to start all of these episodes just kind of like set the groundwork for the audience. For folks who don't know who you are already, like give us the quick nuts and bolts of like who you are, what you do, who you do it for, and then like how did you end up in the outdoor rec world in the first place, right? Because there's a whole lot of windy paths that can kind of get you to where you are.
Yeah, and mine's definitely windy. So I'm Isaac Niblack. I'm the co-owner of New England Fly Company based out of Portland, Maine. I manage the guide experiences side of the business. So I'm on the water with clients. I design the trips. I manage the inventory for the equipment that we use and take people on the water, which is the most fun part of the business. And it's why I got into it in the first place. So I used to guide in college. So my journey is kind of like more of like a returning home, it feels like. So I did sea kayaking and climbing and backpacking guiding for an adventure camp when I was in college in northern Wisconsin and Michigan. So I'm from the northern Midwest. Met my lovely wife, Laura. We moved to the East Coast looking for something different, fell in love with Maine, ended our vagabond ways and set up our life here. And then it became very obvious to me that I was missing more of that like dedicated outdoor time. And so in the pandemic, I started teaching people how to fly fish. This has always been something I've done alongside my outdoor adventures because I've always been curious about like what's in a waterway and like what's in a river. And when you're hiking and you're looking at a stream, it draws you. It's a feature, right? You're interested in it. So started fly fishing alongside of our other adventures and fell in love with it, started teaching people in the pandemic. And that's when it sort of clicked to me that I was like, I could really do this. I miss this so much from my time in college. So the opportunity presented itself to go into business. There's not a lot of like freshwater guides in the like Portland, Southern Maine, Sebago region that I operate in that are focused on the fly fishing aspect of inland. Most people are trolling lakes or you're going offshore out of Portland for, saltwater species. So beyond stoked to find that the New England Fly Company like domain existed. No one had claimed this name and I couldn't believe it. And I was like, this has to happen. And so one of my good friends who runs the operations side of things from Portland, does a lot of our fly tying, and I got together at a fly tying night and said, let's make this happen.
It's amazing.
Awesome.
And it wasn't that long ago, right? Like all of this is kind of, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that was in the works for a while, but the launch was not that long ago.
We launched last year.
Last year,
yeah,
okay.
As a company, yeah.
So it's still pretty new. And
still feels very new.
I bet. Yeah, and you're probably growing your clientele and the business as we speak.
Like in this very moment. Yes.
In this very moment.
Yeah.
They can hire you as your guide, as
Absolutely.
their guide. That's amazing. So, talk a little bit more about like the business and what the experiences are like. Like, I mean, I don't really know much about fly fishing, but my partner is super into it and I see the value in it. I mean, and I know it's a really big thing here in Maine. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what does that guided experience look like?
I mean, Maine has one of the oldest guide traditions in the country, right? There was very few states that certified guides until recently, like New Hampshire started doing it, but it was like Maine Alaska and Montana for a long time, the states that actually certified guides. And the first guides in Maine were fly fishing guides. So this tradition has been around for 150 years, right alongside like the Warden Service as like staples of like Maine's outdoor recreation. And so it's really fun to plug into that. And from a business perspective, you're drawing on this tradition, but you're also trying to like bring folks into kind of like a modern experience. So whether that's like half days, learn to fly fish. I mean, the way we've structured our entire business model is focused at folks that are coming from away, trying to learn something new or engage in a similar place that they've been going in a new way. So we target a lot of families. So it's very fun. We have like coloring books for kids if they come on the water with us. Very instruction, patient, educational focused. You know, if you book a full day with us, like we cook for you like riverside or streamside or pondside, wherever we end up. And have like a very customizable experience in that sense. So we do like a discovery call with everyone who comes on, break down kind of what their goals are and how we can align with that, because it matters a lot to us to make sure that you have a good time regardless of what your experience level is.
Sure. That's interesting. You know, and I think with that, you know, you talked about this a little bit, but I want to double click into this a little bit. Like when you all of a sudden started having that like moment of, oh, okay, I think we're making the jump and like turning this into the business, right? Like what were some of the things that, like, especially in those early days, were like, okay, cool, we pulled the trigger on this thing and we're going, but like if someone in our audience is thinking about taking a similar path like that, like what were some of those initial steps where you're like, oh, I learned this thing really fast, and this thing over here, I'm still figuring it out a year in, you know, like those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, so I benefited from having like some startup experience in a corporate world before this. So you're not going to get around growing pains. You just have to figure out like what the ones you're willing to pay for and what the ones you're willing to like kind of grind through, right? And so, you know, like I paid for like Google Workspace so I could have a Google page for my business, which a lot of guides don't have. I can run Google Ads integrated with that. You know, you support the back end for like a YouTube studio. Like there's a lot of stuff that we do that's targeted towards honestly like a more business savvy experience for ourselves, right? So make our jobs really, really easy to get the word out there, to get advertising out there. Having a physical location listed, and so people can say like, oh, these people are based in Portland, Maine. And then, I mean, this is a whole ball of wax we can get into, but like the intersection of like SEO and like AEO, so like AI based results and traditional like search engine results. So like doing a lot of like upfront user experience to understand like how are people finding you and like what keywords you're using for, right? So even like New England Fly Company, we're trying to capture people like that are looking for like New England fly fishing. Like we want those entry level users, first of all because we love them, but second of all because it's also a captive audience once you have them. So for anyone like trying to get into this, you want to figure out like what's my niche in this world, right? In like Maine, where there's almost 7,000 registered Maine guides, right? Like what's my niche? Like what am I doing to set myself apart? So for us, it's like we want to capture that Portland funnel of people coming through and looking for those experiences. And so we set ourselves up like that. And so our page, like we write a blog about all of our waters, and it's all tagged to outside sources like Wikipedia or the IFW website or like different conservation groups like Native Fish Coalition, Trout Unlimited. And then we pay for like other memberships. So our name is also a click through. So like Maine Outdoor Brands, Trout Unlimited business partners. Like, so our ecosystem on like the SEO and is really robust. And then in the blogs themselves, we write key phrases that we know that AI search is going to pull out. So like you can ask AI like what people are searching for on their own, you know, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT. This feels like cheating in a certain way, but it's like that's how people are engaging now with like online search. And most people are not picking up the phone and calling you. And so you have to get your name out there any way that you can. And so combining those on the website, even though as someone who loves to write, sometimes it kills my soul to be like, I'm gonna write an AI phrase in here. But like you'll bury it in the paragraph. It'll like the rest of you will be very you, but then it gets pulled out and then you know it goes from there.
That's so interesting. I'm like learning like little business. This is something we should be working on the podcast.
You don't even realize it's happening.
Okay, whatever.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but
it's true.
That's the piece, and I'm glad you went there, right? Because I was trying to get you to go in a little bit of that direction, because like that's part of actually running a guide business in 2026, right? Like
Yeah.
when you're talking about new customer acquisition,
Yeah.
where are you going to find them, right? You're not like posting a flyer on a telephone pole in the middle of Portland. I mean, maybe you are
Hey, that
also
could
doing that
probably
strategy.
work. You should...
Maybe you are doing that strategy
I will
as
do
well.
whatever it takes
Yeah.
to get people on the water.
Maybe you are also doing that, but having some of that, like, they are tools available to us, right? And other people are going to use them. And I have become very conscious of, like, because I use AI a fair amount, right? Like, and there's plenty of search style use that I have, and I'm very conscious of, like, what is chat. I primarily use chat, and so, like, what are the things that chat tends to pull out the most when I'm like, hey, I'm looking for X, can you help me figure out who the players are in this space? And you can start to see patterns of, like, okay, this kind of business is showing up at the top all the time, right? And we can talk about some sort of more
Yeah, you guys
more
could dive
down
into this. I'm like
Yeah.
gonna pull us away from
well,
this.
but I'm also saying, like, this is stuff we can talk about off the podcast,
Yeah,
because
for real.
we can't give all the secrets away.
These are some good secrets.
But that's part of the landscape, you know, like, and I think about, like, the student that I'm working with at UMF who's like, yeah, you know, like, I want to run a guide business. The only thing that is in their brain right now is, I get to go fly fishing with people, and it's going to be amazing, and I'm going to create great experiences.
But don't, like, lose that passion.
Right, of course.
Like, that's the thing that, like, you try to protect by, like, making everything else work for you.
Yeah.
Is, like, well, if you want to have, like, a really great time on the water, or if you're a different type of guide, like canoeing or whatever, and, like, you want to have that experience protected, like, you can't be out there, like, being like, did I get back to that customer? Or, like, am I gonna have a job next week? Like, oh, did that? You know, like, you have to, like, think about how you're gonna, like, systemize scheduling and, like, client relationships and all of those things, so that people don't feel like they're being, like, left or lost through the cracks when you go out of service. You know, and so I think that's also, like, a really key part of, like, why you want to pay attention to how you set up the back end of the business, is so you can have it, like, an easier time. So one of the things we did, and, you know, you can tell me if we're going too far into this, but, like, we did a big Google ad budget over the winter when people were, like, trip planning. And now that it's, like, summer, we're just going to let, like, the website SEO and that kind of stuff, like, take over. And we're just going to focus on the on-the-water experience. So having that, like, mental turnover, too, of, like, May 1st hit, it's time to, like, get people on the water and, like, focus on that. And, like, this experience is what matters now.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, that's really great. I think there's a whole aspect of people coming into this industry with the passion, but then they don't have that other piece to it, and that, like, usability for the customer, like, that experience to be able to come on and, like, know what they're getting into. Like, that in itself just opens you up to a whole new, like, customer base, because a lot of beginners are not, like, super comfortable with the lingo or know what they're getting into themselves. So, like, being able to, like, have that up front, read a blog post to understand what the experience might look like how it's important to the guides who are taking them out, like, that's huge. And I've seen the shift, and we've kind of talked about it in the podcast a little bit, but there's a shift of, like, what types of experiences people are looking for in the outdoors. Like,
Absolutely.
less of this, like, rugged, we're going to go and, like, bushwhack into the spot and we're going to catch a bunch of fish and it's going to be epic, which I'm sure you'll still get some of those clients. But, like, and I see it, you know, through my job too. I have a bunch of students coming in and they don't want to go and do wilderness experiences, but we're trying to, you know, change the experience so that it's more accessible to all different types of people. So I feel like that's kind of what you're doing with your business, is, like, making it friendly for people who might not be as comfortable in this space.
Well, I fell in love with getting people to learn fly fishing. Like, when I started teaching people in the pandemic, it was just, like, friends and acquaintances who wanted to go out, and, like, that's what I fell in love with when it comes to, like, the guiding fly fishing, because the decision to guide fly fishing, it's, like, a highly technical, pretty, like, not beginner friendly on ramp.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to take people and, like, have them catch a fish, like, their first or second time out. Like, that's really fun for me.
Yeah.
You know, like, and we have this kind of this economy in Maine, right, where a lot of, like, guides that have been doing it for 20, 30 years are on the verge of retirement. And they have these big client books, but they're not online half the time. It's, like, people in their cell phone. And I talked to a retired guide just last week, and I was out pike fishing with him, and he was, like, kind of sussing me out, because he's like, I still get calls, and I'd love to recommend someone in the Portland area. And he's like, I have these people that are still in business in like Rangeley and Moosehead, which we also guide in. But, you know, I would love to have someone be able to go out, you know, in Portland or Sebago with someone that I trust. And that's how like the older Maine economy still functions in a lot of ways, is like that word of mouth, like your reputation really matters. And you don't want to like turn your back on that. But if you're getting into something for the first time, you have no clue that that exists.
Yeah.
Like you're looking for like an easy to navigate website, someone who's really friendly,
Yeah.
someone who's going to be really patient with you. And like, that's what I think we excel in as a company, and what I bring from like, again, my startup and kind of customer service backgrounds is like, I just want to make sure someone has a great time out here. Like we'll catch fish, whether it's the first hour or the fourth, like we'll get there, but like, let's just make sure we have a great time out here and like you're comfortable.
Totally.
That's cool.
Yeah, I kind of want to go with you now. I have like no interest in fly fishing at all, but you're kind of selling it.
I've fly fished twice, and I would definitely need a pretty healthy refresher.
It's a travesty. We have to go.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
it's one of those things where like you really do need like a mentor of some sort who like has the equipment and like the patience to teach you. Like it's not something. So it is a place that like a guide is really needed, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I had a mentor down in Massachusetts for a little bit when I was striper fishing on Cape Cod. This dude saw my buddy and I like having a good time, but clearly like we were beginners in the saltwater world.
Yeah.
And that was like the wildest summer of striper fishing of my life. Like he would just like call or text us and just be like, meet me here at this time. We're going to go like night fishing at this beach. And I'm going to like break you in basically. You just wanted to see if we could hang. And then he was like, what's your address? He started like sending me like striper flies like to my apartment. I'd be like, dude, this dude's nuts. But like, I love it. This obsession, this like, and it's awesome to pass that on as well. Like it's fun to take people and just see that spark happen.
Yeah, totally. I would be curious on your perspective on this, like coming from the guide side. Like when you have someone who's thinking about like doing some sort of fishing experience, right? Like how do you describe to them the difference? Because I feel like I have felt this in the literally 2 times that I have casted a fly fishing rod.
Yeah.
But there's a different feeling and sort of like just, I don't know, the ambiance around the action of like actively fly fishing compared to like whether it's ocean fishing or freshwater, like on a traditional rod. So like, can you talk a little bit about that? And like,
yeah,
you know, I don't know if I asked that question super well.
I think I know what you're getting at, but I think like there's a mentality to fly fishing that requires you to slow down a little bit. You know, like especially if you're coming from like a spin fishing background or a bait fishing background, like the gear does a lot of the work for you. In fly fishing, you do the work, and a lot of that work is mental. Like the way that the rod and the equipment is all set up, it's meant to be very interactive. You know, you don't have a lot of, I guess, leeway. When you make a mistake, it's very obvious, and it's very obvious to the fish because your whole line will like smack on the water, or you'll get snagged in the branches behind you, and you know that happens, right? That's still gonna happen. But like you don't have the benefit of like, you know, like live bait where the scent's in the water and the fish find that irresistible, right? Or in a spin rod where like you just like let go of it in an apex and the lure will do the casting for you, right? The rod and the lure have that relationship. Where in fly fishing, like the technique matters a lot, and so it's important to slow down, to have that mentality of like kind of perpetual learning. Like it's going to take a lifetime. Like I'm not the best fly fisherman out there. Like I still see people who are like out there in their 60s and 70s. And I'm like, no, that guy can cast. Like every time I think I can cast good, I'm like, no, that guy can cast. And that's what's so fun about it too, is it's like you continually get better for the rest of your experience with it. Not to say you can't do that in other types of fishing. I don't want to throw too much shade, but I am a pretty like diehard fly fisher, and I think that it is a more fun, interactive way. I grew up trolling on the Great Lakes. Like that to me was not that exciting, even though you caught big fish and you caught them regularly, because the interaction with the fish happened away from you, right? Like the things you did to make that interaction happen were so set. Where in fly fishing, it's just super dynamic. And like you can manipulate the fly and the line and the speed of everything in such a way that like you know exactly what you did that like made that fish take the fly.
And that is exactly why I asked that question, because you could tell by how I asked the question that there was a 0% chance that I was going to describe it so eloquently how you just did. But there is something to that, because I've done both, right? And there is something completely different about that level of interactivity that comes with the constant action of like rolling through the fly fishing
And if you
process.
struggle to sit still like me, it's great
Yeah.
because you're not just sitting and watching a rod. You actually get to do stuff all the
I
time.
struggle with the sitting.
Well, and that's where I think so many people sort of lose the interest in the fishing as a whole bucket. You know, is everybody just thinks like, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna cast off my bass boat and just sit here and wait for something to grab, and you know, it's kind of just like the age-old excuse of like, well, you know, I wanted to get 6 hours away from my home, and so I went fishing instead. You know, like, but yeah, that interactivity piece is really really, I don't know, like it is the thing that I connected to the most.
It can be as immersive and active as you want it to be too. Like you could do a 10-mile day in the whites and just take a small rod and blue line for like small stream bookies. Blue lining is like when you trace a very small blue line in a map.
Good job.
And
Good job.
so you follow these like headwater streams up and you catch small fish all day, and you can crank out miles if you want it to be like a more of a mountain day. Or you can go to a pond where you sit in a canoe and you watch like rising brook trout all around you, and you patiently kind of like wait for them to circle back around and you cast, and it's like maybe like less physically active. But that's also like the beauty of fly fishing that I think a lot of people miss, is like there is an aspect of the sport that is for everyone, like, and it's more accessible than people realize because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something I've been recently learning, I did some trolling this past weekend with my partner, and I'm like, there's so much that you can do ahead of time to like prepare you for being successful. And like, I didn't really know a lot about all of the education around it that kind of goes into knowing what type of fish are there, the temperature of the water, what you're using for your lure. There's a lot to learn and know about the area you're fishing in too. So like having a guide in that aspect as well is really helpful, especially if you don't know the area, if you're coming in with a lot of experience, I feel.
Yeah, and it can be tough to DIY if you don't have like the local history of a place and like what fish are there. I mean, like even like just environmentally speaking, like there's a lot of changes that bodies of water go through that change how fish behave, even if it's a pond that you know really well. I mean, water temperature is a big one. Like fish move very differently depending on the temperature of the water. Time of year impacts that. Water flows if you're on a stream. Like high water mean one thing, low water means another. We can go down a whole thing here, but the point being is, like there's a benefit to having a guide who's on water every single day or every single week, like knowing what's happening and what's changing, because staying ahead of those changes will make your experience more fun and more successful.
Totally. I know that we've talked about like some of the like conservation efforts in the state of Maine, and I know that like you have kind of your hands in some of the areas around you at least and have some knowledge around that, and I'm curious like how those conservation efforts are affecting the sport and just your guiding.
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
Yeah, so let's take one river for example and dive down it. So the Crooked River feeds Sebago. It's one of the primary tributaries. Sebago Clean Waters is one of the organizations that helps conserve the land, but there's a lot of other partners that are involved in that. So like Loon Echo Land Trust does conservation work there. Trout Unlimited's done like dam removals, but it's also home to, they estimate it's up to 99% of the landlocked salmon run from Sebago spawn in the Crooked River. Mm-hmm. So the problem with the Crooked is that it's a true freestone in the sense that like all the dams are now broken down. So from its headwaters up in Songo Pond, north of Waterford, it flows all the way to the Crooked. Or all the way to Sebago, and there's nothing really impeding other fish moving in and out. So it's susceptible to all the same climate change things that we're seeing across the state. So like seasons are shrinking, like fish are moving earlier and later for their like spring and fall migrations. And then on top of that, like Sebago has a big invasive fish problem. Mm-hmm. So like pike was introduced, lake trout was introduced, smallmouth bass was introduced, and then largemouth were introduced illegally. The other three were introduced by the department in Fisheries and Wildlife at various times to increase angler, experience, right? Not knowing that like the decline they were seeing in the salmon population was being affected by the actions of what they were doing. Mm. So now there's this huge effort to kind of like reverse course. So there's like a kill derby, ice fishing tournament in February for lake trout and pike. Inland Fisheries and Wildlife is like electroshocking and killing pike But just the other week, I was talking to someone. So they're doing like a smolt count. So smolt are like juvenile salmon that are falling back through the river into the lake. Very low smolt numbers this year. And in that process, they electroshocked and killed this pike that was 26 pounds. And inside of it, it had an 18-inch salmon in its stomach. So if you think about like just the damage that did, that's like a perfect spawning size salmon. Right. So we're never going to get pike and lake trout out of Sebago. It's too big. Yeah. They're too endemic. They're here to stay. Smallies are even worse. I mean, the Rapid River, which used to be like the Rangeley destination, like they can't get smallmouth out of there. It's done. So like there feels like this timer on all of these rivers that's impacting like what we're doing. Mm-hmm. There's a flip side of it that is like the rivers in which like salmon and brook trout were kind of already extirpated. Like there's an opportunity there for a guide, right? So like all summer long, you can guide for bass, for pike. Like that's a great opportunity, especially for people like learning to fish. Like pound for pound, those are really fun fish to fly fish for, and they take flies. Like that's another problem, right? Like not all fish will like readily take a fly. Like muskie's a great example up on St. John. But the point being is like there's these challenges, and the crooked is one of these like fragile. It's one of the 4 native salmon lakes and systems in the entire state. Everything else is stocked or wild at this point. So I guide on the crooked very selectively because it's a very fragile river. But it's my home water, and I can't help it. I love it. I love it so much. It's such a fun river. There's huge salmon in there, but you can feel it become harder. And so that's like a place I would take a client who's like, I really want to tap into something special, and I'm willing to not catch a fish to get that. And like that's a rare person. You know what I mean? But it's how I fish the crooked. Like I don't go there expecting to like kill it. Like if I was up at like the Kennebec, I'd be like in like the summer, I'd be pretty devastated if I didn't catch a fish, to be honest. Hasn't happened yet, knock on wood. But the crooked's the opposite of that. Like I actually expect it to be really hard. But it's like this beautiful stream, and it's a piece of history now. Whether or not we're able to be successful, and I know Inland Fisheries and Wildlife is trying super hard, but it feels like, kind of Sisyphus, where every time there's a win, like taking a dam out or something, it's like you learn something like, oh, here's these monster pike just waiting for these salmon to swim by.
Yeah.
So it's tough in that sense.
Good news and bad news.
Yeah. And, I was talking to another guide about this, and, pike are going to be in every water in Maine, is what at some point. Like, maybe not literally, but like, there's some backcountry ponds I won't get to, but like, we are losing like salmon and trout water every single year, and Maine's home to over 90% of like native wild brook trout habitat in the entire country. So to be like, we're the last stronghold, and it's part of what makes guiding in Maine so special, right? But there's just a limited amount of that opportunity that's accessible to the public because all of these kind of more publicly accessible waterways are getting a lot of pressure from invasive species or climate change in a way that like some of the remote stuff will stay, right? But it's a challenge.
So this is the time, because sadly it sounds like you won't be able to do this for much longer depending on how things go. I mean, it just depends.
Just depends. Yeah, there's no crystal ball. And maybe like conservation efforts will get better as we learn more, right? But there's some things we could do, I think, as a society. But I think that now's the time. I mean, now is definitely the time because as water's warm, and the habitat reduces, but it will present other opportunities. Like I said, like one of the things we're really going to push hard for this year is guiding more like smallmouth bass and pike, because there's waters in which they've been here and they've been here for a while and they're not going anywhere. And I mean, there's some smallmouth bass waters here that rival any of the best waters from the northern Midwest at this point. Like this past weekend, I caught a trophy smallmouth that I know like an outfitter in Wisconsin that like if you catch like a 20-inch smallmouth, your name and your picture and the size of it goes on like their wall. And like
you need one of these walls.
I do need one of these walls. But I like caught one of these fish, and it was like out of like a pretty small stream with a buddy of mine. And I was like, this is nuts. Like, are we going to become the best smallmouth fishery state, like, in the country? Obviously, like, in that moment, it felt like that, right. But, like, probably not actually. But it is, like, there are awesome opportunities to be had. So it's not always, like, glass half empty, I guess is what I'm saying. But the nature of the fishery is changing, and that's really important, I think, to understand, because people have this idea of like trophy brook trout, Maine, like I'm gonna come do that, and it's like, okay, that's great, but your window's gonna be narrow, or you're gonna have to go really far for it, which is different than that like new kind of learning the sport. Let's have fun, like thing. So like in the Portland area, especially, like those windows are just really narrow, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, and I think the piece with that, right, is, you know, you talked about like there are some things that like we can't control a decision that was made 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
Right. And so it's kind of like that age old phrase of like, from the education perspective, the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best day is today. Right. So starting to plant those seeds of some of those educational pieces of like why these things matter. Right. Because plenty of those decisions are based around whether it's the, you know, these different conservation organizations doing a lot of educational content around it. And a lot of these things are like, they come up in town meetings and votes, and like that's like where a lot of those decisions come from. So if that educational process can occur, right, then at least maybe we don't make that same decision in 2028 as we did in 1998. You know what I mean, or whatever the thing is. And you know, so I think that's another piece. And you know, one of the things that has really come from a number of the different conversations that we've had on this podcast is just that. Like half of this is just awareness, right? Like it is intro level education, like educational content that if someone is not super familiar with a part of this industry that we know is massive, at least we get you the cliff notes, right? And then we can do a deeper dive episode, and Isaac can go way down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, you don't want me on my soapbox. We'll be here until well after dark.
Dude, Google Workspace does have a lot of space, so
yeah, get the drive upload started.
Yeah.
But I think that's half the battle is like you don't care about what you don't love, and you don't love what you don't know, right? So like getting people exposed to like how fish are just around any of the recreation, whether you're canoeing or boating or ice skating, you know, like, you know, it's all connected, right? And then like that's another whole message I think that's interesting in being in New England is like all these watersheds are connected, you know, in some way or the other. And they all have a story to tell, and it's just fun to be a small part of it.
That's awesome.
So good.
I know this has been great. This has been great so far.
I really just feel like I've learned a lot just by chatting about it, and feel like I'm always learning more about fishing, and it's like definitely an activity or sport that I'm like, oh, I have all these other outdoor recreation things that I like want to dive into deeper, but the more I learn about it, it's like I play on the rivers all the time, but I just don't really know what's going on below me, you know? Like I'm paddling the rivers. But it's just it's really interesting to learn more about the conservation efforts and different fish and like just the culture and the history that it exists here in Maine. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, like this actually came up in a conversation that Sam and I were having earlier. Like this is why we wanted to set up this podcast this way, right? Because neither of us would ever pretend to be
we're not the experts.
People in these spaces. You know what I mean? Like, but being able to bring someone like yourself on, like you can have that conversation with us, and we get to allow as many people that want to sit around that fire with us and listen. Like they get to listen to it, you know, and I think that's really cool. And it's it's a very different way of storytelling when it comes to trying to bring those things that feel so like minutia, small detail, but you get to bring them to the surface in these like kind of unique ways. So I love this thing. I love doing this podcast. God.
Now we're on our soapbox.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to be here. Soapbox away.
Yeah, no, totally.
Well, do you have anything else that you'd want to share that like feels really important to talk about your business, yourself, the outdoors, outdoor recreation economy in Maine?
Wow, just
AI.
make the questions broader.
Yeah, what is it? What do you want to chat about?
I'm just excited to be fly fishing in Maine. I think like the thing, gosh, what I want people to know. I want people to know that like we're here for conversations and questions and getting outside. I think, you know, we have a great website that highlights a lot of the waters we guide on, but we also do a lot of custom trips. A lot of my personal programming in the past for guiding was like extended backcountry. So we do have like a fun like off-grid glamping lodge thing coming this fall. So I want people to stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I just want people to think about the waters they're on and wonder if maybe they could have a fishing experience with us on them.
Yeah. And
Maybe-
what's underneath?
Maybe that's conveniently where our part 2 is. But no, that's really cool. And we'll make sure that like all of the links and the social handles and all that stuff, they'll be in the description, so that way, you know, people can make sure that they're checking all of those things out. But
And no matter how much you trust AI, it can't make you a better fly fishing person.
that's so true. So true.
Gotta go out and do it.
Fly fishing person. I like that.
Yeah, we're trying to get away from that. Like in the nature of like inclusivity. In the nature of exclusivity, fewer people on the water.
Yeah, less people in the water.
No, honestly, I mean, like I think it's funny. I talked to some of the Jenny being one and Brian at Maine Outdoor Brands about this when we first like onboarded with them. It's like there is a lot of like I think stigma and gatekeeping in the fly fishing community, and it's always kind of like boggled my mind because I think I'm just one of those people that likes fishing with people more than I like fishing alone. But there is a ton of water and there's a ton of space for everyone out here. And I think it's really frustrating when people try to gatekeep too much because, as I mentioned, like if you don't know what's there, you're not going to care about it. And there's some like truly special places in Maine that are sometimes like, I mean, there's like sea run brook trout like in Portland, right? And then there's also like these backcountry ponds that like you'd never find on your own unless somebody like took you and showed you there. And like both of those things can exist, and the community's big enough for all of that. And like you're not gonna like overfish those, because there's just not that many people that are fly fishing,
Right.
And so it's fun to kind of like I think open the doors a little wider than I've seen like other experiences and have experienced. I've had people ask me to delete Strava activities because it took place in a certain spot that they loved too much and they didn't want anyone else joining. And that's just like not what I'm about. I want people to fall in love with the places that I love.
Right. Totally.
Bring more people into it. It's great.
Yeah. So we do this segment, Voices from the Summit, kind of lets us close out the episode with some rapid fire questions, make things lighthearted, get to know a little bit more about you as well. And so, first question: early morning hatch or golden hour cast?
Before becoming a dad, early morning hatch. Right now, golden hour cast. If I don't have to get up early, I'm stoked.
One thing beginners always overthink:
their fly selection. I think it matters a lot more about how you present the fly than what that fly is.
Describe the future of Maine's outdoor recreation economy in one word.
Diversity.
Okay.
Favorite town to stop in after a long day on the water?
Partial to Monson. Coming back.
Monson.
from this.
Okay.
The general store there.
That's what I'm talking about. See?
Their
You knew
sandwiches.
exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Also the art shop next door. Laura
Right.
would love it there. You should definitely bring her if she's ever with you.
Absolutely.
There you go. The inside scoop on Monson.
Yeah, you didn't know, did you, Austin?
No clue. No clue. A guide phrase you say way too often.
Don't worry about it. You lose a lot of flies.
Yeah.
That's funny. Finish the sentence. Fly fishing is really about.
Connection.
God, you're so philosophical.
Do you regret having me on this?
No, absolutely not. This is going to be gold. One myth about fly fishing you'd love to retire forever.
You can't fly fish in the winter.
Oh, right. That is something that episode 2 will cover.
Do you mean we're going fly fishing in the winter? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, let's do it. Screw it.
It's one of those things that you do that's really rare and unique. You can bring us
Let's
with
go.
it. Yeah.
We can't right now.
Yeah. This coming winter.
Let's go.
The most main thing that's ever happened on a trip.
Oh my gosh. Not last year, but the year before, taking some folks up to North Maine woods, some remote pond fishing. We have a rare fish in Maine. It's Arctic char. It only exists in these ice age lakes. Long story short, it's just raining like crazy, and driving my Tacoma, this lifted Dodge 2500 like rips past us, and I literally made a comment to the guys I was taking. I said, I hope they make it to where they're going, because it was like they were like 65, and sure enough, about like 10 more miles down the road, they're in the ditch.
Oh.
And so I stop, and the guy gets out, and he goes, I can't believe you stopped, because like they ripped by us like intentionally. And so I pulled their truck out of the ditch with my Tacoma, and they asked me if I wanted twisted teas for my effort, and I said no thanks. So instead, we just bartered for their favorite lake trout fishing spot, and they told me exactly where on the pond they go to catch. And so I think the most main thing that's ever happened is I pulled guys out of a ditch in a rainstorm in exchange for a fishing location.
Love it.
Love that. Love that. So this last one, you get a little bit more leash on this, so don't feel like you have to pull this into a 10-second clip by any stretch of the imagination. And you also get to choose how deep you want to share. But if you had someone and they gave you one day to prove that fly fishing is worth it, where do you take them and why?
I could choose any time of year, any location.
Anything.
Anything.
The slate is blank for you, sir.
That's amazing. I would take them to, there's one or two. There's one particular flat for striper on the Cape that I think in the next few weeks into early June is just like one of the most sublime fishing experiences you can have. There's something about like fishing for truly wild fish that have migrated for 2,000 miles, and they always show up at this one spot, and it's just a ton of fun. You get there at sunrise, it's gorgeous. You get to like watch the sun come up over the ocean, and then you just like watch the bait and the striper come in. The other one would be honestly any number of a dozen like remote brook trout ponds, like late summer into fall, the leaves just start to change. You get the whole experience. There's loons, there's moose, beautiful, rising brook trout, native fish in Maine. It's awesome.
Beautiful.
I want to go to both of those places.
Yeah. I mean,
we can.
Cape Cod.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I spent a couple of years like die hard fishing for striper in the salt on the fly. It was like all I did for 2 years of fly fishing, and it's a very special fishery. It's also not for the faint of heart, I almost got drowned out there once because I wasn't paying attention to like the tide chart, and I was on the flat, and I was on the sandbar, and like the tide started coming in, and my buddy and I had like gravel bike like down past this like gate, and so we were like way down on like this like sand spit, like there was no one else out there, and then like the tide was coming in, and we had to like wade back, so we had to go like through this trough, and like the water's coming in our waders, and we're just like, this is it. This is you and me, buddy.
Oh
like,
my God.
Yeah. My buddy had nightmares about that for weeks, actually.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah, I shouldn't have brought that up. But it's
No,
okay.
it's good. It's good. It's like we could probably fill an episode just about your crazy stories in the outdoors.
Well, that's what this is about, right? Like there are stories that connect you to certain things that happen out here that make you appreciate it more than any photo that you're going to see in a magazine or, anything like that, so, and that's why we have this podcast. So,
we should probably wrap up before we start getting poured on.
Yeah. Well, Isaac, thank you so much again for coming on. This was an awesome conversation. And so for those of you who are still listening, please do not forget, we'll have all the links in the episode description, both for New England Fly Company and for all of our platforms. Hit that subscribe button, hit the follow button, because those are the ways that you actually get to figure out when these kinds of conversations are dropping. And Sam and I have already started mapping out all of our summer conversations, and there is some serious weight coming down the calendar. So you want to be sticking around for all those conversations. But until next time, we'll see you outside.
See you outside.